Why it's impossible? Because it's so hot.
You're very welcome back to Unstable TV. So you lovely guys from where we are now sent us over this video. So shout out to you guys on that. What that is, Daniela's gonna walk us through that.
So as you guys know, we've been in Australia just about a year now. So we've had some good times, we've had some bad times, we've had some crazy times and scary times. So somebody sent us over this to check it out and to see what it's like. So this is why living in Australia is impossible. Definitely is hard, especially the visa we're on. But we'll see what they say.
As we feel like we could share enough to this at the end with some review. That's why we're going to check this out, because we've had a bit of experience here now. So without further ado guys, let's watch and learn together. Let's go.
2023. For only the third time in 40 years, Australia entered a per capita recession.
Because
The
COVID.
result? Australian wages declined to levels not seen since June 2011.
Wow.
Oh.
Even with devastating bushfires, the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown, when polled, there was one thing that affected Australians more than anything else: the cost of living.
It's insane.
Over the last few decades, Australia has experienced one of the greatest housing booms the world has ever seen. Since 1973, Australian house prices have increased by 36 times across the capital cities, and Sydney is now the second most unaffordable place to live in the world. How and why did we end up here? This is the dark side of Australia. Australia is one of the most beautiful places in the entire world. Surrounded by oceans filled with world-class beaches, cities, and parks, the country looks like a paradise. But if you want to live here, it's easier said than done. To buy the median home in Melbourne, a family needs to earn at least $170,000 per year. In Sydney, that number balloons to $260,000 per year. Compare this to the median household income in both cities of $100,000, and it becomes clear that home ownership is far out of reach for most Australians. Now, some might argue that this is only a Sydney or Melbourne issue, but that's just not the case. Since 2020, house prices in Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth have increased by over 50%, while wages only grew 12%. Home ownership is becoming less and less attainable for many Australians, especially young Australians.
Oh, it's rough. Yeah, we can't find anything really.
Young people have not had the luxury to benefit from skyrocketing home values and are constantly playing catch up. The result? Home ownership rates for people under 34 have declined nearly 25%.
That's shocking.
That's really
The craziest
bad.
example of Australia's housing crisis was this home in Sydney. It was sold without a toilet, without power, and without a kitchen. But that didn't stop a bidding war and someone paying $3.5 million.
Outrageous.
But what if you just want to rent? Surely you can find a decent place to rent. Sadly, no. Median rents in Sydney exceed $3,000 per month, while Brisbane is not too far behind at $2,500. Historically, Australian rental rates increased at a reasonable amount per year. However, since 2020, annual rental rates have skyrocketed by over 8% per year. People are caught between a rock and a hard place, trying to pay 2024 rental prices with 2011 wages. And this would all be fine and dandy if people could find a place to live. But the demand for rental units is insatiable. Every rental unit application is met with dozens, if not hundreds, of competing applications. Viewings have lines wrapped around blocks, and at the end of the day, renters aren't fighting for anything beyond a place to live, a place to sleep, and a place to call home.
100 other people applied for my apartment and did the interviews.
It was really difficult. We were on Facebook groups for a while. There's just so much competition.
The dream of working hard to afford a comfortable life is slowly fading, and hardworking, honest Australians are left feeling hopeless. All of this begs the question, why is real estate out of control? The first
Big question.
I mean, we can only imagine how hard it is for actual, real Australians that live here. Because obviously we're only visiting for a couple of years and that's it. But that's shocking. The majority of the time that we've lived here, we've been in hotels and Airbnbs because we can't get anything.
Yep.
But that's fine for us traveling and stuff like that. But that's not okay for a family. It's not okay for even a single person that lives and works in Australia and is Australian. It's just ridiculous. And we have seen the queues like that as well outside places. It's just It's hard. It's tough.
From our own experience of walking around and getting to and from temp and casual work, it does look like that.
Yeah. The cost of living is extortionate.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Culprit that many point to is immigration.
Ooh, sorry.
This week, the government say the migration system is broken and needs a massive overhaul.
From 2022 to 23, Australia welcomed nearly 740,000 people. To put things into perspective, that's more immigrants than any year in modern Australian history, and 200,000 more than pre-COVID levels. The impact of this huge spike in immigration is simple. More demand with the same housing supply equals higher prices. Specifically, economists and analysts believe that immigration has primarily impacted rental housing. The bulk of immigrants to Australia are temporary visa holders, and 70% of them are renters. The impact hits hard in migrant area suburbs. For example, Melbourne's southeast or Sydney's inner southwest saw 18% jumps in rents in the last year. In addition, immigrants are often willing to split their unit with more people to stretch their dollar, outcompeting locals. This has led to an increased yield on rental rates on real estate that had not been seen in Australia for decades. But what about housing? The argument that immigrants are a primary contributor to the increase in housing prices is quite weak. Australia's migration rate has actually decreased over the last decade and is in line with historical averages. However, over the preceding years and decades, there is one big difference. While immigration has continued to grow with the population, housing starts have declined.
The construction industry is facing a catch-22 with the cost of building a new home rising again.
In 2023, 170,000 dwellings were completed, the lowest amount in a decade.
I was like, that's a lot.
At the same time, Australia saw the biggest spikes in immigration in a generation. So what gives? Since 1966, the number of homes being built relative to the population of Australia has been declining. Specifically, in the year 2000, building rates fell off a cliff, creating a significant supply shortage whose impact can still be felt today. One of the main culprits for Australia's decline in housing starts is culture. Australia is a very suburban environment where communities and citizens have opted for urban sprawl over densification. For example, Sydney and Melbourne have about 2,000 people per square kilometer. Compare this to 6,000 in London, 4,400 in Munich, and 3,600 in Amsterdam. It is a shocking difference. When compared to other major Western cities, Australian cities are some of the least densely populated in the world. Many Australians believe that a suburban environment is ideal for raising families and safe communities. Thankfully, Australia has a ton of land that is mostly unpopulated. Theoretically, they can continue to build outward and maintain sprawl. Sydney alone could add 280,000 homes in its greenfield growth areas. But sadly, this would work in theory, but Australia has a major NIMBY problem. Even though Australia is going through an extreme housing crisis, March 2024 saw the lowest number of detached home approvals since 2012. These aren't high-rise condos, these are detached, single-family suburban homes. Strong community advocacy and government red tape lead to extremely long approval times for housing developments. For example, to receive an approval for a single home development in New South Wales, it takes 111 days on average. In Liverpool, that jumps to 288 days. Compare this to Texas, where it generally takes less than a week. These long wait times have made it impossible for the government to achieve home building targets. Specifically, Australia is on track to build 40% less homes than needed to meet the government's affordable housing targets. The low rate of approvals for housing has created an artificial land scarcity, which in turn has driven up the price of land. Since 2020, home values have risen at 3 times the rate of apartments. With land becoming such a scarce resource, it further challenges developments, as it becomes increasingly expensive to acquire and develop land economically. But this is almost entirely by design, as scarce land benefits homeowners. This has had a tremendous impact on young people in particular. Remember, home ownership rates for young people have dropped by 25%, compared to only 8% for the general population. Okay, we can all agree that immigration and low development rates are worsening Australia's housing crisis. But there is another critical factor at play: tax incentives. During the 1930s, Australia had a major housing shortage and wanted to encourage investment in rental properties. To encourage
Yeah, I do understand that though. There is a lot of, there's a lot of immigrants, including us, that are all fighting for the same job. So we're all going to be fighting for the same apartments or a room or something like that. But we're also against Australians, which realistically Australians should get it first, in my opinion. They should. They live here. They should get it first. That's kind of a no-brainer, really. But unfortunately, that's not the way it is. It's who has the most money.
this, the country introduced negative gearing. Negative gearing allows an investor to offset the losses on a rental property against their personal income. For example, if you make $100,000 per year and lost $10,000 on your rental property, you can deduct the $10,000 off your personal income tax. This idea is pretty novel. In fact, out of the entire OECD, only New Zealand and Japan have these policies. During the 1980s, the government tried to change negative gearing rules, imposing restrictions on deductions that can be claimed, similar to the United Kingdom. But this was met with significant backlash, and negative gearing was returned to its original form. As the old adage goes, you can give, but you can never take. At the same time, in the 1980s, the government removed interest rate controls, which made it meaningfully cheaper for Australians to use debt to buy homes. This made negative gearing even more attractive and allowed people to leverage debt to execute the strategy. Now, this alone isn't enough to put Australia over the edge. Not only can you leverage negative gearing, but you can also hold real estate investments in your retirement account known as a super. For those who don't know, a super is similar to an IRA. Like an IRA, a super has meaningful tax benefits, and when buying real estate, rental income taxes are reduced to 15% instead of your marginal rate. Unlike the US, where buying real estate through an IRA is a huge pain and costly, in Australia, it's extremely easy and often encouraged. But that isn't all. There's more. In 1999, the Australian government reduced capital gains on real estate sales by 50%. And if you're holding your property in a super, you're effectively only paying a 10% tax. There is almost no country on earth that has such a favorable tax regime for property investors. Australia is truly exceptional. This tax regime has been criticized heavily. The argument against it is that it materially benefits landowners and older Australians, and frankly, the argument is quite sound. These tax policies have encouraged speculation in real estate and are costing taxpayers nearly $8 billion per year. Some might argue that this is overblown, but when 50 to 80% of all investment properties are negatively geared, there is a problem. A system that encourages speculation on income-losing properties is highly flawed and very unique. But this has created another challenge. Australia has made it so good to invest in non-productive assets like real estate that no one bothers to invest in anything else. Australia's productivity growth has been slowing over the last few decades. The average annual labor productivity growth between 2010 and 2020 was only 1.1%, significantly lower than previous decades. A lot of this is due to lack of innovation and growth in non-service and non-mining sectors in Australia. The best way to put in perspective how little Australia innovates is to look at its R&D spend as a percentage of GDP. In 2022, Australia spent 1.7% of GDP on R&D. When compared to other major nations, that is terrible. The OECD average is 2.4%, and major countries like the US, Germany, and the United Kingdom are all far better than Australia. As a result, nominal GDP per capita and real GDP per capita have not increased over the last 10 years. Wages and job prospects are eroding while cost of living continues to rise. The loser? Hardworking Australians. Even when you compare business and income tax, it's clear that Australia is deciding that land ownership is the most important investment activity. Average income taxes charged in Australia are higher than all but 3 OECD countries, and corporate taxes are no different. Australia's corporate tax rate is 6.3% higher than the OECD average, and when comparing Australia's small business tax to even Canada's, Australia's is 2.5 times higher. Currently, Australia collects a disproportionate amount of government revenue from income taxes and corporate taxes, and a disproportionately low amount from real estate. As Charlie Munger famously said, "Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome." Here you have it, a government that has incentivized speculation on housing while disincentivizing working hard and building productive businesses. The incentive to hoard land, the outcome, a terribly unfair economic system. I can already imagine the comments on this video, blaming political parties for the issues at hand. And that might be easy to blame any single government for the housing crisis in Australia, but in reality, this problem has persisted for decades. The Labour Party of Paul Keating saw a modest rise in housing prices, while concurrently seeing a rapid modernization and growth of the overall Australian economy. Overall, his tenure was mostly balanced. But then John Howard came in and saw the greatest rise in housing prices in modern Australian history. Under his tenure, housing more than doubled. Then, the Labour Party got 3 chances, but housing continued to grow, only slowing down because of the financial crisis. Following this was the coalition government. Tony Abbott, strike. Malcolm Turnbull, strike. Scott Morrison, strike. And housing still out of control. Now, with Anthony Albanese at the helm, we finished the decade with a massive increase in housing prices. If you bought a home in 1992 for $500,000, today it would be worth $2.4 million. And if you were born after 1992, you probably don't own a home and might never. The conclusion is simple. This is beyond political parties. Australia's housing crisis runs deep. It is something that cannot be solved by jumping from one bandwagon to the next. What will it require? Incentivizing business investment, lowering income taxes for hardworking Australians, abolishing negative gearing, lowering capital gains incentives, removing red tape to encourage developments, and educated Australians who can keep politicians honest. You are the solution, and your tool is policy. Good luck. Subscribe to 2 and 20 for more economics and finance analysis.
Oh, that was a lot to digest there. So first off, a very big shout out to the original content creator. Do make sure you check them out, give them a like, subscribe, and share, and all that good YouTube stuff. Of course, a very big shout out to you guys in the comment section for sending this one over. Quite an eye-opening watch, and wow, take it away, Danielle.
I mean, realistically, it is the same in Ireland. It's outrageous the amount of money that you need to save to even be, you know, able to afford a cheap home.
Yeah.
It's not just about the deposit for the house in Ireland anymore. You have to have double or triple that nearly. It's a joke, which seems like it's kind of like that here. The negative gearing just seems strange. Just seems really wild to me. I don't really understand it that much. Gonna have to look into that a lot more. But housing in Australia, after seeing this, has definitely gone up way too much. And it's really sad that he said if you're born after 92, you're never going to be able to own a home, which is very scary for us.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it's the same in Ireland. It's tough. What do you think?
Certainly the toughest part about it all is, imagine trying to explain to someone before 92 a house sold without a kitchen, a working toilet, or the correct amount of living space for $1 million. Now, if you guys think this is outrageous watching this, look up some of the Irish properties that are being sold in the countryside. People are selling them without windows, roofs for $500,000.
Yep.
Some even more. Look it up, and if you want, we can do, if you're interested, we will do a video on it showing you these properties.
Yeah, because some of the ones in Ireland, it's literally like an old farmland, but it's just rubble.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. It's more expensive than new build houses are, and it doesn't make any sense. And the land you're getting with it is only small as well. It's not like a huge amount of farmland. It's only a small amount. You're paying that much money for it, you're gonna probably have to put 2 million in to get it sorted anyway. It just makes sense.
2 million just to get working where you have a toilet.
Yeah.
And that's if you're lucky.
Windows.
Yeah.
That's a good one actually. We'll do a video on the Irish housing crisis as well, because that's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
I like very much how the narrator through this. A lot of us love to turn on the TV and go, it's this government, it's that government. I love how he showed you the graph of it wasn't just one party. It took many a party to come up with this, and some had a balanced offset on the prices, and then some just came in and skyrocketed. But how we came back to where it started to where it is now, just to show people, because you will be in your own head trying to get a home or rental, that this didn't happen overnight. This wasn't something that just happened because you became an adult. This has been planned and deep rooted for numerous years. It wasn't just you became an adult and the boomers are against you. That's what happened. That isn't it. It's been a deep rooted plan, and it's a policy that doesn't work anymore.
But there is one thing you can always do to buy a house first. So they have things like, first time buyers in Ireland, stuff like that, which helps. And then you have another thing called really rich parents that'll just give you the money. So, you could just do that too. No, I'm only joking. It does help having rich parents though. Like you were saying, Australia has a lot of investment portfolios and people kind of just buying houses to just rent them out, which is a huge problem in Ireland as well. The problems here are very similar to Ireland too. And then people can't get, the investors or the homeowners or people that have 4 or 5 homes or apartments, their prices are so high that nobody's moving in there and they're just left. Like, what can we do about that as well? Because that's not right either. There has to be something done about vacant homes that are just left there that people are they just own and they just choose to not do anything with them. Because that's not fair. That's causing a huge problem too for everyone. So, and I'm assuming that's a problem over here as well.
One thing that's a problem that we've heard from here, from people, won't name them, they've been telling us, offshore buyers. So people who do not live in the country and they're coming over, probably a family of 10, they enter the country, they buy up homes just to turn them into Airbnbs. And what they do is, they do the same in Ireland, but in Ireland we have a thing called vulture funds. Yeah. So what these have done, in our own experience, we've seen people even posting these videos on Twitter. You'll have a family of 4, and these have, family of 4 is just the example, just a family going up. This person will hop out of either the best Range Rover money can buy or wherever expensive car, write a check, boom, bid's over. Yeah.
A new housing estate that's being built, an investment company or vulture funds as they're called in Ireland, because that's what they are. They'll come in straight away while houses are being built and say, I want 10% of all houses here. Yep. And they'll just, there you go, there's the money and it's already fully bought. Yep. And they're renting them out for ridiculous money. It's in and around the same prices here as Sydney and Melbourne, like 1,500, 2 grand, 3 grand. This is in euros now for like apartments and rooms, and it's just awful.
Yeah, we have the same thing as what's going on, which Australia does a bit better in some parts of the country, but Ireland has this big, huge problem with these investment funds and LLCs and offshore. They buy 10% of this, or sometimes they could buy 80%. It is a bit crazy with the projects, and they will shovel 10 students into a house and charge them crazy prices. I know in Australia you may get your own room here, but they will charge you the price of a whole house for the bed next to someone else in the same room.
Yeah, Ireland has a bit of a bunk bed problem at the minute. Like, people are like, €500 bargain to stay there for the month, but it's €500 per bed, and there's like 2 bunk beds, so that's 2 grand per room, and there's like 4 rooms in the house. Yep. It's just outrageous. If you don't believe us, you can look it up as well. It is a problem.
And if you love what you're watching here and you love following along with us, do not forget to
like, subscribe, comment, share. Don't forget to hit the bell because, you won't miss anything then.
That's been our 2 cents, and we will chop ourselves out of this.